Today on the show we have Mark Turrell. He's a global authority on scaling, a tech pioneer recognized by the WEF, a brilliant mind at the intersection of strategy and artificial intelligence. We're going to discuss what the AI revolution really means for growth and global networks. Mark, welcome.
Thank you very much. Lovely to be here. Fantastic place as well.
And what's very interesting, what you wrote to me on WhatsApp before this show, that you got about 20 times more efficient during this year.
Crazy.
Thanks to AI. What did you do?
Well, and so by the way, and I was very efficient last year. So this isn't as though I was just a lazy person doing nothing last year. I was already, last year, for example, unDavos, we put on a 3,000 person conference. And that was using a little bit.
That's what you're going to talk about later.
But now I could do 20 times more stuff. And maybe then to put it into context, what does 20 times more mean? So beginning of this year, like every year I have this big conference, maybe I can follow up with 10 people. Now I can follow up with 100, 150 people. Maybe I can develop one proposal. Now I can do 20 or 30 proposals. I was doing prospecting. So I was just very curious to say, who are the leading edge minds in space, in quantum? So before, for me to do the research, it would take a good number of hours to research every topic, maybe find some conferences, find the speakers. All of these things for me, I worked on my PhD. I know how to do research properly. I'm extremely fast at typing, so I can do lots of these things. But it would still take hours. And also, I wouldn't finish the work. So I could work for hours and get half of the work done for maybe one or two of the themes, but I don't finish the work. Now, through deep research type tools that OpenAI has and other tools have, it allows me to almost sort of surf the world, almost like doing a master's thesis on every topic. It allows me to consolidate together lists of people. I can look at bios instantly. So just on research, I become massively more productive, but then being able to personalize the outreach massively more. So for me, the best thing that I can say is that I'm 20 times more productive as an individual than I was from last year. And I'm fully 100% behind that.
But now, scaling this to the whole world, to the whole society, what does that mean for our society? If there are more people like you and who do this, what does this change in the world?
Well, I think so. Society is going to have an interesting challenge. So I believe that the vast majority of society is going to have a very challenging period for the next 10 and likely 15 years, because it almost takes a certain type of mindset to know how to use the tools, or even just a mindset to play with the tool to understand it. And most people genuinely don't have it. Most people's education, they're taught to repeat things. They're not taught to think for themselves. And most people's jobs, you're basically required to follow a process. If you have a customer support agent at Swisscom, you're not meant to invent poetry when you're responding to somebody's problems. You need to follow a process. So right now, I do see that many people, their jobs that they're doing and the education that they have doesn't lead them to be able to even take advantage of these tools, even if the tools are there. At the same time, it means that sort of if you're able to get your head around this, and many youngsters are, by the way, so there are many creative people, then you can create incredible entities, societal programs, projects, or business entities as well that could become huge by way, let's say, economic measures and this type of thing, or number of users, relatively quickly with almost no people. I do see a little bit of a challenge that, like somebody like me, I probably, with the work that I'm doing now, should be employing around 15 or 20 people. At the moment, I employ 2. So there are 13 people that I could be employing that I'm not. But okay, I'm an exception, doesn't really matter. But as soon as the large companies start to think in this way, it'll be challenging times for the next 10 or 15
It will be challenging. And how do we have to prepare? Does that mean that maybe creativity is will be a more important skill as like before repeating?
Well, I think the best way of preparing or protecting for this thing is, first of all, deny that it's going to happen, ignore it, change rules and regulations to mean that it's not going to happen to you. That's very good. I think I was sort of looking at Microsoft Copilot is sort of just made some announcements about their future investments, about how many people. it was terrible AI. So right now, I think implementing bad AI systems will allow people to be employed longer and earn more money. Because I think if we just continue as human species to just be really bad at doing or mediocre at things, then I think people can survive in employment longer. However, if we just sort of go away from the sort of fun, slightly sarcastic, negative view, what could we really do? I mean, I do think that these technologies that we have are really perfect for helping people with continuous education. So for those people that are in the workforce right now, if you want to become better at negotiating or become better at people skills, you could pretty much use even something like ChatGPT or Le Chat from Mistral to write your own training course, personalized to you. So if you want to use these tools, all of these tools are there, but I think certainly creative thinking, complex problem solving is there. But I do also see that it's still probably going to be another 3 or 4 years before a lot of the fundamental pieces of AI will be good enough to actually do much of the serious stuff in business.
I think it's not good enough yet.
So large language models. I mean, it's an interesting bit of mathematics. So, and it's incredible. So, I mean, I've developed the term approximated intelligence. So, because it's approximately intelligent. So it looks like it's intelligent. If we compare it to most humans, it generally looks like it's intelligent. And for most things that it delivers, it looks really good. But then, I mean, I work sometimes on making proposals, and in the middle of a proposal, it will invent products that I don't have. It will change the numbers. it will. But I think this then fundamentally goes into the large language models, which is the foundational basis, not for all AIs, but most of the AIs that people use today, like the ChatGPTs of the world, they're based on some level of probability. So you take a gigantic 15 terabyte data set of whatever human words, numbers, characters, and stuff, and you can look at what is the likelihood of this being the next, this being the next, and it inherently has some level of probability built in. But it's not random, but it has some level of probability. But that means that every single time it runs the dice.
Yes.
Now, when you have, let's say, if you're using these LLMs as part of an insurance company and you're looking for claims assessment, well, if every single time there's a slight probability that it makes nonsense, and it goes nonsense to a little bit of nonsense to a little bit of nonsense, I've been looking at studies where it can be 40% nonsense coming out of a process. Well, you can't have that as a company. Or you can, but you'd be a pretty bad company if you did it.
But how can you avoid the nonsense or even recognize it as nonsense?
So I've been building AI systems sort of ourselves. And so we're kind of having to do a few things. So one is you need to almost have an AI, and their job is to validate what the other AIs are saying. So you almost need to put it in its own box so it doesn't have any memory of what the other ones are doing. And you give it a specific task of saying, you're the verification one, and you are a mean, demanding auditor. You're Heinrich, and you'll be, and so right now, so then it increases the, I mean, it doesn't stop it from happening, but it decreases the likelihood that you'll have a problem. The other thing, just like technically when you're building these things, there's something in AI called a context window, but really just to say, look, if I was to give you all of Goethe's works right now across the table and all of Shakespeare's work, well, in a context window that's really big, I could give you all of those books at the same time, and then we could ask it questions. The thing is, it's a lot of books. And if you then say, well, tell me about what Goethe thinks about flowers, and compare it to what Shakespeare thinks about flowers, it'll go through this gigantic big blob of data, and it'll hopefully find something good. However, if you gave it every single book separately, it would then give you, and then afterwards to say, look through each book separately and then give me an answer, it'll give you different answers. So there's this level as sometimes where you can chunk out the data, and then you run it on chunks, and then you run it on chunks of chunks. So there's just different ways of architecting and designing how these AIs work in practice, with the goal of getting better quality output.
So I think it's amazing how fast it works to get workarounds. I mean, I remember a year ago, ChatGPT was just writing nonsense, but now I'm working with, when I write text about some topics. I work with Gemini, and later I put it into Perplexity to do a fact check. So another what you're saying, another AI, and then it goes search around like 50 or 100 sources, which I couldn't even do myself. in this accuracy, I guess.
Well, and I think what it goes to is that at the moment where we're at with AI, so there are, I like to think of these things as playbooks. So it's kind of a manual process. We know that we have to take this and we have to move it over here, and then we take this and move it over here.
Mm-hmm.
If the output's not very good, we start again or we
Mm-hmm.
redo. But we're following a method or a process. Just like we would do if we were, let's say, designing a photo shoot. Okay, we'll do this, we'll ask this, we'll see how these things work. So there's like pieces of a process. It's a playbook. And because we do it again and again and again. What I think we're moving towards, and my hope for next year, is we see more AI orchestration, because then it means that there's some of these manual things that we do, we should be able to have some pieces of them automated. To say, like, hey, if I always go this way, this way, this way, this way, back again, well, I don't have to manually do that. So can the AI just do it for me?
Yeah, but if this AI moves forward so fast and does more and more things, how can we keep track of that, and how can we make sure that we're not going to be eliminated at the end? Because,
well, I mean, I think so. If you don't keep track of it, you're likely to be eliminated at the end.
That's already happening at the moment.
So at the moment, it's very. I mean, they say that, okay, people aren't being replaced by AI, but they're being replaced by people using AI.
Yeah,
so if you and your job choose not to use AI, that's fine for you. But we just tick tick tick. At the same time, then there's using AI and there's using AI well. Tick 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 tick. But and it is genuinely problematic. I mean, but if we talk about, let's say, how do you sort of be at the leading edge and stay at the leading edge? I think that there is a balance between focusing on business value and keeping up with the technology. So part of the issue that I see is that some people love, and for me, myself, when AI started, I was using a different tool every week. And a different tool and a different tool. And I think I got about 6 months in and I realized that I hadn't actually done any work.
Just trying out.
Just trying. And all the tools that I started with knowing at 6 months had already become old. So I had to repeat the process again. So at a certain point, I jumped off the bandwagon of being a tool expert and said, well, actually, I'm a business expert who knows how to use tools. And so that I would pick a few that I would focus on and get good enough with. And at the same time, though, I know that every 3 months, I need to poke my head up to say, like, okay, what's the new thing out there? Every 3 months, 6 months as well, there'll be certain things that I can't do today, but I'm waiting because logically speaking, they should be doable in 3 or 6 months' time. The best example would be, I mean, okay, one example is the pictures with fingers.
Yes.
So 3 years ago, you'd have whatever, the 8-fingered creature or the 3-legged person. The other classic was pictures with text, posters.
Yes.
And there was just all of a sudden, when you start seeing in your LinkedIn feed people having these sort of blister packed things of people and letters, and it knows words. So there's certain things. I mean, video is another one. I see audio is another one. These are areas where it was, let's say, bad to okay to like okay good, and so now some things like on the video side go from being impossible to use to being basically practically Hollywood worthy, and that's game changing.
Yeah, and I see it from like commercial ads, TV commercials. Just I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, it really started that they really use it. Before they, sometimes they get a shitstorm for it, like Coca-Cola. But it will be used for sure in the future, and it's a bad message for every actor and filmmaker, I guess.
Oh, but it's also a bad actor for everybody that is working for compliance in a bank. For the people that are doing whatever, copy editing books, writing new textbooks. So
or in the legal section, I guess it's a very bad message.
As long as you can have a restraint of trade to basically control how people trade with you, you might be okay for a while. And that could be 100 years, by the way. But generally speaking, I mean, many human activities are focused around some use of language. And AIs don't sleep. They've read every single book under the planet. They can speak almost every single language. And if you can tie 4 or 5 AIs together to check each other's work, etc., generally speaking, most AIs even today would be better than most humans all the time on most things. So I think then if you can sort of hide your business away is okay, but I don't see it as a sustainable model. I've one friend of mine, so he and I always like sort of chat around sort of good uses of AI. And so he raised $62 million for his solar panel company. He's building currently building a factory in California. And he said that this year he has saved $2 million of legal fees that he has avoided spending because he was able to use a combination of Claude, OpenAI, and other AIs to review, to craft, to develop legal contracts that normally would have cost him literally $2 million. That's meant that he doesn't have to raise as much capital. He can use that $2 million to bring in engineers or fund sort of R&D work. But instead of giving that money to the service industry, he's basically using it himself. Well, the investors that put money into him then say, this investment, this guy's really clever. The other portfolio companies we have should do the same thing. And then the people that he competes with are saying, wow, this guy makes profit. I've heard that he does this thing. We should do the same thing. Well, sure, it might take out $5 million or $8 million worth of legal fees, but let's just do the quick math on how much a lawyer gets paid. This already suddenly means that there'll be 50, 100 lawyers sitting in California that no longer can pay their student loans. But it's inevitable. It's tricky. And I mean, I'm not massively, I'm very positive on using AI. I'm not positive for the next 10 years about what it'll actually do. I think it'll be brutal.
Yeah. Now you're talking about you making many dull predictions, but you're still very positive about it. Why are we so positive about it? Even if we know that it could make difficult changes and many people could lose their jobs.
Well, and it's if we just, let's say, sort of, like, what type of world will we live in sort of 10 to 15 years out? So my hope and towards expectation is that it should look more like Star Trek than Terminator. But if we see many of these technologies will help whatever science dramatically accelerate. Some of these things where, our society didn't put enough money into research. It didn't put enough money into commercialization of science. Or they put in lots of money, but there's one professor who's in charge. And if that one professor doesn't like this one specific thing, then nobody does any research in the area. Well, now with AIs, also particularly the global nature of these technologies, it means that now there are lots and lots of these innovation light bulbs. It also means that quite often it used to require vast amounts of capital for startups to be able to develop things. Now, I think DeepSeek pretty much was the shock of this year, the beginning of this year. I mean, hard to remember that it was just beginning of this year, that you had before these multi-billion-dollar investments going into NVIDIA chips and everything else, and DeepSeek, even if it's not entirely specifically true, putting in somewhere between $10 and $50 million to come up with something that is, let's say, 90% close. So I do see that there is so much innovation that is appearing that there will be many, many complete breakthroughs. I'm expecting breakthroughs in medical science, technology, help us with life extension. There'll be certain polymers that we can have that make things stronger and aren't as extractive. So I think that there's actually the opportunity now with these, let's say, machine helpers to come up with many things to improve our society. And hopefully that will then make it cheaper for us to live, which means we need cheaper energy, we need cheaper food, we need something interesting to go do. But so I see those things are likely to happen with AI-powered work. I mean, I can see that through the companies that I speak to coming to Davos. I speak to that the startup ecosystem as well. Now, specifically for your brother-in-law that is a graphic designer, well, maybe it's going to be hard for him. Specifically for the couple that doing compliance and website designs, well, maybe they'll both lose their jobs and they can't afford their rent or they can't afford their mortgage and nobody wants to buy the house because everybody in that neighborhood is in the same place.
But what could they do? Just be open-minded and hope that they find, embrace artificial intelligence? Or is there even more they should do?
Well, it's it's a hard question. You asked a very good question, but it's a very hard question. So what should they do? I think that if we think about this as almost, let's say, if we go back to sort of the 1990s and we look at the internet, a lot of people didn't want to use the internet. A lot of people didn't want to use Wikipedia because the information was wrong. They didn't want to use Yahoo because, well, okay, I don't want to receive an email about Viagra. Fair enough. It doesn't matter that they didn't want to use internet. Ultimately, they're all using the internet. My mother is was moving towards 80 years old. She uses the internet. She uses FaceTime, video calling. It didn't matter that at the time maybe she didn't want to. She's all using it anyway. So I do think there's a certain level of understanding and acceptance that needs to be taken place. This is the infrastructure of the future. It is not going away. And then ideally, though, and now fortunately, these tools are really easy to get access to. So and also, if you look at how much time people spend on social media, if they just use 1 hour less than on Instagram and use it instead to learn something instead, then they would be dramatically better faster.
I should do this
time. Right?
So now we're going to talk about the UnDavos movement. You've been a key figure behind the UnDavos movement. For those who haven't heard it, what is the core mission, and why did you feel the world needed an alternative to the traditional Davos summit?
Well, and I like sort of unconventional Davos is probably the best way to sort of frame up UnDavos. And now, I was a WEF member in 2008.
Yes.
So I paid the $30,000 to go. And at the time with my company then, it was totally worth it.
I saw the video you did about it, why it was worth it, yes.
So, so I think then what I found, though, is that I had quite a meaningful conversation in that first year with a lady who was doing stopping human trafficking. And the WEF had invited her, and at the time there was about 2,700 people in the Congress Center, and it's around the same today. It's not a physically big building. So, and she said, look, it's great that the World Economic Forum has chosen this topic this year as being important, but being realistic, her topic isn't important enough because there are literally 50 seats, plus or minus, for social initiatives in Davos every year in the WEF, and her topic is only important for every 5 years. So therefore, there's going to be 4 years of nothing. So yes, it's nice to get a stage, but what happens next year? At the same time, back in 2008, actually, you're from Davos, aren't you?
Yes, I grew up there, yes.
What was your, when was your first sort of WEF experience for you?
And it was when we went to school and we saw like high top politicians walking around in the street.
And I think it was, I went to the first time that those top politicians went into the school. I think there was around 8 or 9 years ago. It was an NGO that did it because before it was, let's say, this WEF event was, let's say, quite extractive. So they would take over the playground for the kids so that the limousines could go park.
Yes, Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie did an event in our school theater.
And at least there were, actually that would be fine. and did they actually talk about school with the school kids?
No, they were talking about, I don't know, economy or politics. Yeah,
did they invite the kids?
Yeah. Well, that's what they're doing from time to time nowadays, I guess, yes.
Well, and this is happening more and more, that there's more an integration into the community. There's more of a realization from the World Economic Forum is that they don't live in a separate bubble. Like an ice village. They have they're sort of part of an ecosystem. Well, when I was there in 2008, I was therefore in this sort of nice sort of elite bubble, and brilliant, great being in the elite bubble. But what I noticed that every single shop was empty.
Yes.
The shopkeepers would either leave or nobody was going to go into the shop.
But that's the bad thing, because the shops are now empty the whole year, because they only rent it out for the WEF, and they make enough money to keep it empty the whole year.
Well, and I think the city has a large responsibility of figuring out how to solve the problem. And if the city
that's what we're trying to do at the moment.
And if the city was to invest in solving that problem, that will be valuable.
They will. They do.
Well, and they certainly they need to do a bit more.
Yes.
because there's a vast amount of money now that comes in, and over this time there are now at least hundreds of millions that come into the local people. That wasn't true in 2008. So in 2008, all of the apartments were empty because all the locals would leave because the schools would close and the kids would go out. So all of the apartments used to be empty and all of the shops used to be empty. Today, it's 20,000 people in town. I think there's at least 2,000 apartments that get rented out, minimum. each of those apartments gets rented out for 10 and quite often 50,000. So we can do a quick bit of mathematics. And even if the locals don't get all of the money, we can quickly work out how much locals are getting. I know people in the service industry, particularly if they have a nice apartment, they're getting between 10 and 12 months worth of rent paid in a week.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it does create this quite a strange dynamic. And again, it's something that the city should sort of think about more and more.
Mm-hmm.
And the community, like my community of unDavos, would love to participate in that as well. Because we shouldn't be part of the problem. We are part of the solution.
Yes, but your unDavos is happening in, I think, in one of the big hotels.
And we actually take place in several places at the same time. But yeah, so the cool thing is that so we take over at least part of the Mountain Plaza Hotel. Fantastic hotel. It's owned by the Berg Barn. And so it's a really good 4-star space for conferences. So we take over several of the rooms. And so I have programming Monday through Thursday. And we have 10 or 15 different programs. So it covers things like health or energy, AI, fintech, education work. And so it's really creating this sort of time and space for people to gather together, to then get their sort of voices and the messaging out, and then make sure there's enough space for people to network, connect. And then for me, one of my obsessions with unDavos is to bring action to Davos. So even when I've been organizing these different types of panels, I always ask people, what happens next? And if they don't have a good answer, I say, you can't run a panel. Easy. Because I think talk is very important.
Yes.
Clearly, the World Economic Forum has decided that 2006 is a spirit of dialogue, and this is very important. However, for me, for my end of the promenade, it's the spirit of action, because ultimately our planet is literally burning or drowning, sometimes the same place, sometimes on the same day. So right now, then, we clearly need more and more action. So therefore, for me, this is this intentional time and space about how do we drive action, but who am I to decide whether it should be health or AI analytics or robotics? So for me, I don't care. I mean, if you've got good ideas, sort of come in and unDavos can look after you.
And what is the USP different from the traditional web? Is it more, I think you're talking about democratizing things.
Yeah, so democratizing Davos is where it started from, and that comes from this 2008 observation to say the human trafficking lady can't speak. So my concept was based on people need something to do and a place to stay. Very, very simply. So this now has obviously worked because now there's 20,000 people who need a place to stay and something to do. But democratizing Davos doesn't mean to say it's open for everybody, because democracy, after all, doesn't say that everybody gets to govern. What it means to say, though, is that there needs to be more and more spaces for people to do these intentional things. Now, what it means then is that if it costs you 100,000 to do something, very few people can say yes. That means, therefore, the types of conversations are really quite narrow. If, on the other hand, it's sort of there are many, many different options, there's many, many places, it allows more voices to come in, more topics to come in. It also, by making it cheaper, generally has brought many more women to Davos than before, and also people from different countries as well, because otherwise it's crazy to have a World Economic Forum where you're representing only 25% of the world's population. So I think, therefore, by and the key thing that I've done with unDavos was actually sharing information that was basically free information that people didn't have. And it was crazy that this hotel badge that was there, so how do you get into the important hotels? I worked it out kind of by accident in 2008 because I met these sort of very interesting Swiss bankers and lawyers, and they wouldn't be at the Congress Center, but they would be in this hotel. And I said, well, how do you get there? And they said, well, we're with the Swiss Asian Chamber of Commerce. Very good. What are you? And they said, well, we have a breakfast session on Thursday morning. And we just have this letter, and then we go to the hotel and show them the letter. And in those days, we'll pay 50 francs, and then we go in. What? That was the secret. And I found, I mean, it's a little bit like finding out that the Illuminati exists, and the secret is that the PIN code is 1234.
Great. But now let's concentrate on because this podcast is mainly about artificial intelligence. What are you doing in Davos in this topic?
So for me, the big thing so a number of areas I'm sort of super interested from Davos, and Davos gives me a read about what's going to happen in the next 3 months to 9 months. So things that I'm interested in are embodied AI. So this is robotics, drones, use of sensor data. So I see the future of going more physical. So Do you remember the Boston Dynamics dog?
The Boston Dynamics.
So there was the robot dog. So I'm just make sure.
The robot dog. Okay.
So the robot dog had a machine learning thing, like an AI on it. I remember watching this video about 2 years ago. Before you'd program, the researchers would program the dog. It would go, it would dance, but it would follow a program. I watched a video about 2.5 years ago where they gave it access to ChatGPT version 4. They put its data set into GPT, and they gave the dog a microphone and a speaker. So then the dog will be told, "Well, go into the room and bring me back the bucket."
Yes.
Well, now the dog would go in, use its vision, and say, "Well, there are 2 types of buckets. There's a red bucket and a green bucket. Which one do you want?" Before, it couldn't do that because it didn't understand word, language, vision. And so right now we look at, let's say, as we're gradually tying in these large language models and ultimately sort of world models as well, then we can put it into physical substance. We can have machines that move, pick things up. I was about 10 years ago, I was in Shanghai, and when I was coming back at night, I was amazed to see around 200 workers resurface a main street, and it was all done overnight, but physical people. I then look around our streets of Europe, and now I'm beginning to imagine, well, obviously humans can't work in the dark, and they can in China, massive lights. But right now, I can now imagine that there'll be sort of fleets of whatever humanoid robots that will be digging and everything else and do the work that we need to fix our stuff at nighttime. So I think sort of humanoid robots, drones, everything else is going to be really big.
Yes.
Other things that I'm interested in is use cases. So there's a lot of mixed results about, so mixed results on how companies are using AI. However, I would like to speak to the best companies with the best use cases because they've done something special. And quite often it's not actually the technology, it's quite often it's leadership. It's there's just, it's ways that they've rethought their business processes. And so I'd love to learn from them and give them a stage as well so that other people can learn from them. The next things that I'm interested in AI, health. I mean, health is important for all of us. So in fact, I had my appendix ruptured this year. So I have hands-on experience of the UK health system for 2 weeks, and then the German healthcare system for 2 weeks. It was quite a complicated thing. Now I've got a surgeon friend of mine who was able to give me verification through this process. So I wasn't relying on AI or just the doctors that were there. But I found that I could give my blood results every day to the AI, and the AI always gave me basically the correct response every single day.
How did this work? You get your blood results through AI, but how AI has to get your blood to do it?
Well, no. So I was in the. So I started my appendix ruptured. I mean, I live in Berlin, Germany, but then I was working in London. I had a sort of tummy ache, but I think it was just generalized tummy ache, not in an area, and then. So I ended up at the Westminster College London Hospital, something. So what happens is that typically the nurse would come around at 9 a.m. to take the blood. The result would be completed and put into the system at around 10 o'clock.
Yes.
But then because I wasn't a severe case, etc., I would be visited by a doctor at 2 p.m. I realized that I, as a patient, had the rights to my data.
Oh.
So I would just go to the doctor. I mean, eventually when I realized this, I didn't know it at first. So because my surgeon friend said, well, you could just ask them. It didn't occur to me to do that. So what I then did is at 10:30, I said, well, can I have my blood results? And they would just read me off the numbers. I would type them into ChatGPT. And then it would say, well, okay, based on these numbers, you're not going to leave hospital for the next 4 days. Because something's not right.
It's bad, but it's really interesting. Yes.
And then what I would do is that in the evenings, I'd say, well, what do you think? What should I expect for tomorrow for my blood results? And it would say, well, if it's going better, it looks like this. If it's otherwise, it looks like that. So it gave me as a patient much more control of what was going on. But then also just because of me, I mean, there were, let's say, my CRP number. Okay, well, I don't know what that means. So I then asked ChatGPT to say, like, what is it? And then I used deep research to do actual research on it. And then I even made it into a podcast with Notebook LM from Google. So then while it was getting my blood drawn for different blood work, me and the nurses were listening to podcasts on the science of the history of medical science.
But I think this principle of getting your data and doing something with it, this is really democratizing us.
Correct.
And at the same time, there are voices, or there's even there are signs of that the big five or big companies are getting more and more control of the world, which is the opposite of democracy, I guess. So,
well, there is this sort of balance. So at least the tools exist to have democratic capabilities. It is our choice as individuals and as a collective whether we use that democracy right wisely or badly. So at the moment, just because there's a democracy or democratic approach doesn't mean to say it will be good. It might be better than the alternatives, but it doesn't mean to say
it doesn't work from alone. It has to be lived. Yes.
I think the other thing as well, and maybe this then goes into AI slop, and the other one, because that's another one where I'm fascinated to get more stuff, is that because I went to hospital, I never used Instagram before I went to hospital, but now I look at Instagram every once in a while. And what I've become fascinated by is that how little human content there is. And how bad the human content is.
What do you define as human content?
Well, not made by AI. So now instead, this is actually a good podcast, so everybody should watch this definitely on Instagram and everything else. But then there's you've seen the two cats on their podcast?
What?
So there's a podcast of cats.
Of cats.
So now
yes.
Why not?
I love cats, but I haven't seen this podcast yet.
It's genuinely quite funny. Yeah, these sort of two, sportscaster cats talking in their podcast thing, and it's completely AI driven.
Okay.
So what I see then is that gradually, we know that AI's hallucination is kind of a nice, pretty word, but it will, through probability, sometimes come up with wrong answers. Quite often, we don't know how it came up with the answers, and even if we could, we can't be bothered to look because humans are kind of lazy. It's also, if something looks cool and attractive, we will tend to do the simplest thing first and follow that instead of using our research. It's all very well, let's say, doing research and let's say following up to see are all of these links correct, but most people never would do that. So I think there's just generally a human desire to conserve energy, which means that we will do the simplest and easiest way possible. And I think that most people are losing, if they even had it, but they're losing their ability to do critical thinking. Is this right? Is this good? Is this correct? Actually, so yesterday morning I came through Zurich airport, and there was a guy who I'd met in London. We met, I even took a selfie with him, and so he'd asked to have an urgent meeting. So I'm sitting in Zurich airport having this urgent meeting with him, and he said, we need to use Teams, and there was a pop-up on my phone saying, you need to download some SDK. Saying, you need to move to a PC. This is odd, because I only met the guy for a short amount of time, but something is wrong. And because I know something is wrong, I trust my instinct. If I have any sense that something is wrong, people doing anything bad, it is wrong. Like autistic type of decision, it is wrong. I then worked out that his account had been hacked, and somebody was trying to get me to force install stuff onto my computer so they would get hold of all of my stuff and all of my network. Now, that's because I have critical thinking. I didn't finish my PhD, but I did a PhD research work. I know how to do critical thinking. For me, this is in my blood, my DNA, and my mental. Most people don't have that. Most people are, their phone goes, swipe, swipe, swipe this, and sadly, most people are becoming mindless.
Yeah.
It would be nice to sort of shake and rattle them to do better, but at the same time, on our phones, they have access to the global knowledge of the planet. They can learn Korean if they want to. They could make sushi. They could do all kinds of stuff, but they just choose not to. So, sure, we have freedom, and they have freedom to choose. They don't have to learn. They don't have to educate.
So critical thinking is one of the main things we should.
Critical thinking is important. I think also
which is important.
Creativity is another one, because creativity can be taught.
Yes,
very much taught skill.
And creativity, and you were talking about human content, which I guess you regard as more valuable as AI-generated content. So. Is that true?
Well, actually, is human content more valuable? I'd say now, if you look on balance, how much content there is out there, I would say from a majority perspective, AI content probably generally will be more valuable than human content. However, there'll be certain areas where human content is vastly better than anything AI can come up with. So I think that there is, the best comedy is definitely right now human generated. At the same time, when I was beginning my early journey on AI, so I grew up in England, so I like Blackadder. And I've got a Netflix account. I mean, I have two sons, teenage sons. So we have a Netflix account, a Disney Plus account, Amazon Prime account. So we have every piece of content that you could possibly get. I found that I haven't laughed at any one of the comedies on any of these 3 TV shows, not much. For me, the most that I ever laughed on one sort of block was I got AI and I said, well, invent for me an imaginary country. It then invented imaginary sports. And then at some point then it invented an imaginary football team where an imaginary footballer had scored the winning goal. And then it invented that he'd been caught drunk driving and there was a dead body in the back of the car. And it's like this whole... I was laughing my head off. It was genuinely hysterically funny.
Yeah, I
for me.
Yeah.
But so therefore I wouldn't say that AI is necessarily not funny, not smart.
No, it is not. I'm doing a lot of music composing with Suno.
Oh yeah, really good. Yeah.
And sometimes I'm really surprised. Sometimes the lyrics I do sometimes with with Gemini or ChatGPT, and I'm really surprised sometimes what kind of witty and funny things come out, and even how Suno matches it to the music to find the right emotion. So I really disagree if somebody says, "Oh, this AI stuff is very technically cold and emotionless." It is not.
Yeah. Well, and so, but I mean, then I'm almost crying about how problematic it will be for the people that are aged 15 to 25.
Why, especially?
Because how do you get started? And the thing is that, I mean, if you're a songwriter and you want to really, songwriting is going to be your thing, well, how do you get enough traction and enough experience to become good at songwriting? And the AIs today, and this is now, it's being recorded in December 2025, AI is already pretty incredible. Next year it'll be even better. So you won't get started. It's just, my 2 sons at least are studying physics and applied mathematics. So, but even then, in those areas, I don't think they're safe either.
No.
So I do see it as generally we have a huge problem that is basically, it's a freight train heading towards us where at the moment, within months, not even years, within months, these people will not get employed. Because, I have to be a capitalist because I have to have money, I have requirements that I have to have for whatever shareholders, and I can't go to the bank and say, look, I'm really sorry I lost 150,000, can I have more money to lose? So I can't afford to hire more people than I need. I can't afford to hire people that don't have the skills. I can't afford it. But where do the people get started? I think the other one is, where do people then get retrained? Because it's not just the young people, it's the people that are doing website design. Or, have you done Lovable for, let's say, making games and stuff?
No.
So it's now at the moment, so there's this whole application building sets of AI. So Lovable, Cursor, even Gemini, you can do it too. And you just describe, I would like to make a...
like vibe coding? Or...
vibe coding, exactly.
Okay.
Vibe coding. So I could, for example, so one of the games that I play in Davos, like practically speaking, is I help people share apartments. And so I say, okay, here's somebody's got a 3-bedroom apartment. This is a couple. These are 2 men who don't want to sit in the bed together, and we play bed Tetris. I could vibe code. We could have started doing it at the beginning of this podcast. I won't do it now. But so I could vibe code a game called Davos Bed Tetris. And it might not be perfect, it might not be good, but it would take us 2 or 3 minutes to write the prompt. We wait 5 minutes for some code to come out. If we really wanted to do it, we could spend 2 or 3 hours poking it around, and then there's a generally decent enough game. Cool. What about game developers? What about people, and this is just a game right now, if we look at, let's say, having a new app for banks to then coordinate actually accessing your bank information. So right now, there are things that before you required lots of special skills, lots of work, lots of effort. At the moment, though, many of these AIs are okay or bad. Last year, they were just bad or non-existent. But what is the rate of change? In 2026, these vibe coding things will be okay to good, and 2027, they will be excellent. And we know that because the underlying technologies get better and better, vast amounts of money come in, because fortunately the technology itself is democratized because it's easy enough to go use. It doesn't require tens of millions to get started. Anybody can spin up these things. It means then that you've got a vast amount of innovation, creativity, and you have people using AI to help them write these things. It means all of the problems now will be solved in 1 or 2 years.
I hope so, but what do we tell all those people whose jobs are in danger now? They just should keep up and learn how to use AI tools. So what should they do?
I think there has been an underappreciation of physical work. So if we look at, it's crazy in many big cities, it's impossible to get a plumber. At my house, we have a leaking sink. We've had the leaking sink for 2 years. It's not easy because it's not a big enough work to get a plumber, and it's not bad enough to flood our house. But it's not an easy thing to do. So I think there are physical things, tables. So I think there's a level of physicality that's missing. Now, remember what I said about embodied AI. At a certain point, then it'll be cheaper to spend $25,000 on a robot that doesn't sleep, doesn't work, can be trained within a second to do a different job. It's tricky. It's very tricky. I'm an alien. I'm just visiting your planet. I can always go back home whenever I want. These human bodies are quite fun.
But do you agree that we live in really interesting, amazing times now?
Oh, massively.
What was the thing that generally surprised even you in the last year?
If I treat this as, let's say, what are the surprises that I've had this year? So one surprise was Jaguar. So that the car company, Jaguar, did not produce any cars for 1 year.
They almost broke, I read somewhere.
Well, they probably went, they're owned by the Gast-Tarter, and they're owned by a bigger conglomerate. But that meant that they didn't produce, so normally they produce 1,000 cars a day. But so, it certainly costs them $2 billion plus, but it means that a gigantic car company, because of clearly poor security, but probably no much different from anybody else's security, stopped producing all vehicles, which has the knock-on effect for the supply chain. That was a shock, because it wasn't 2 days and you spin up a server again. For 1 month, they didn't produce any vehicles. What the hell? Next thing is that I think it was this year when the Russian nuclear bombers over in Siberia got exploded by drones. Well, then you look at you have the ability to have whatever unconventional delivery systems for weapons, like in this case, a truck with a roof that opens up, a drone that can go 7 kilometers autonomously, bang, and you destroy $100 million worth of equipment. Well, the shock piece wasn't just that. It was that plus Denmark, Lithuania, and these drones flying over Europe. Our critical infrastructure across Europe has zero security. Zero. If you were to play a little war game as to how would you play with Europe, we have nothing. And there is no intention visibly to do anything about it either. So we're defenseless. That was a second shock. I think another shock was just generally that people didn't appreciate that when in the American democracy, when that president got elected and said, I will do these things, what was shocking was that he did those things. Maybe, I live in Germany where there's always coalition governments and nobody ever gets what they voted for. So maybe then it's perfectly plausible that, okay, he's not going to do it because politicians never do it. I think what was surprising was how surprised everybody else was that they're doing what they've said. But now I think the other thing is that pretty much every single piece of society is moving all at the same time. This is another shock because I think mentally if AI is, we've talked about AI and let's say I've got relatively, I would say realistic, but I'm happy to say very pessimistic views of what's likely to happen. But that's only one piece of the puzzle. At the moment, as we're recording this, there are aircraft carriers off the coast of Venezuela, and the United States has decided to become a pirate nation. Okay, sure they can, and I'm sure there's a law that might stop them. I'm sure at some point the Supreme Court might get...
Yeah.
But what the hell? It's like...
Amazing things are going on, but getting back to the topic of this podcast, what's the role of AI? Could AI help us with make the world more safe?
Well, if we play the game, let's Is AI responsible for the mess and drama of this year? No, it's not. I think
some people say it is,
but I'm pretty comfortable that right now, if we look at, let's say, the material pieces of geopolitics and everything else, there are humans behind all of these things. I think that's pretty clear. So 2025 is definitely humanity. Now, maybe this 2025 or 26 possibly is peak humanity. This is when humans have been allowed to run and control all of the decisions. It's not, 26 is a bit hard, but 27, 28, you begin to see a world where maybe we have devolved some pieces of decision-making, some ideas, to AIs, whichever variants there are. And so then we take some of the humanness out. Now, humanity has many incredible great strengths. Love, create, loyalty. At the same time, humans have hangovers, humans get annoyed, humans get upset with people that have different skin color to each other, right? Humans have got like a lot of issues as well. So
of course.
I wouldn't be surprised in 27, 28. It probably will start more on the corporate side. Because on the corporate side might be saying, why are we paying $350K a year from some senior manager deciding which products we move around? AIs can do it better.
So that brings us maybe to... I'm a journalist. I'm exaggerating sometimes. Are robots the better humans?
It's the what's your time frame?
It's already over, but we go on.
But it's like, what's the time frame for when we define better?
Okay. I thought you meant the time frame.
Yeah, no,
podcast.
I know. It's fine. It's a great conversation.
The time frame of like the next 5 to 10 years. Okay.
I think that generally, so clearly when we humans think about this, and we think about humans, we first of all think of ourselves, and then we think of Mozart, Einstein, Ronaldo. We just like pick the very best of all humans, as opposed to the vast masses that aren't Ronaldo, Mozart, Freud, etc. So I think right now, within a 10-year time frame, whatever version, so the thing is that a robot isn't a robot, so it won't be that we have whatever a Tesla humanoid robot standing here, because after all, it'll be more like the Borg from Star Trek, where it's completely connected to all possible data that's ever been and ever will be as well. So, and it might be instantiated as a thing with a glowing face that is talking to us, but again, it's not that. It's read more books than we have, it can synthesize, it can make a song better than we can have, etc., etc. We will need to fundamentally have a different relationship between ourselves as humans and to coexist with these robots and machines on this planet. As to what that will be, I don't know. But it's a material thing we will have to cope with over the next 5 or 10 years. So on the balance, I think machines will probably do, if we look at, let's say, 95, 98% of the population, machines will be better.
Better in what?
Well, the thing is that they'll be more economically productive, but it may be in 10 or 15 years we have to scrap money because money's irrelevant. I guess that's one of Elon Musk's thing is that, so it would be nice if humans were always kind, but they're not. One of the things that I've actually been quite curious about thinking as, let's say, as a machine looking at humans is that for me, humans are defined by how much they lie. Because after all, the machines have all the data. Because if you have everybody's WhatsApps and then you have your Snaps and you have your Facebook, machines know humankind and human history. And when we humans would tell the machines, like, we're really honest and we are kind, like when the human says, look, no, I'm really trustworthy, goes, yeah, but so right now the machines will have all of the data. So, I think humans, we have, let's say, definitely an overinflated opinion of ourselves as a species. We somehow pick the best of ourselves on our best days and ignore our actual selves. Right now, machines don't care. These are just ones, bits, numbers, and stuff that'll be Now, it does mean I think there's space for us to be humans, to be fun, to be kind, loving, nurturing, and hopefully we use the extra time that we might have to do more good human stuff, which we can do. Generally speaking, I'm not too hopeful, but I think if you can certainly find your good group and try. So I did French literature when I was 16, 17, 18. So I studied in England, and I remember the book Candide by Voltaire.
Voltaire, that's what.
So, and Candide has this sort of young kid roaming around the world. Always, there's something always better. The grass is always greener. And at the end of the book, the wisdom of the book is il faut cultiver notre jardin or votre jardin. You need to look after your own garden.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I mean, even though I do have a 25-year plan to change the world, I use Davos as a platform, and there's maybe then I come onto another podcast and we could talk about these other things as well. So right now, generally, I think that there's many positive things that are there. I think that as well, like from our nature of being human, we do need to sort of look after ourselves and the people close to us. And it's good to sort of take on more a care of the world. But you still need to look after yourself. And the people around you, and you need to be healthy and well enough. And like in my case, I take advantage of the AIs that are all there, and the fact that I'm being 20 times more productive doesn't take anything away from anybody else. So I'm happy in my own little bubble. If I can share things and happy to connect with people as well, happy to do that too. But yes, we shall see.
Yeah, we shall see. And yes, I could go on and on talking to you. It's so interesting, and it's even longer than most of the podcasts we already did. And thank you so much, and hope to Davos will be as successful as it was before for you. And thank you for coming here.
I know. Thank you ever so much. Really, really good. Thank you ever so much. Thank you.